We've all been ill at some point in our lives, whether that's a nasty cold or a more serious chronic condition, something 160,000 people in Wales are currently living with.
I fell ill in April 2020. We thought that it would just be a 2-week cold or flu, but quite simply, I haven't recovered in the last 3 or 4 years.
My bones can get really painful, and it's to the point that I can't walk whatsoever. I can't put any pressure or on anything.
We rely on doctors to tell us the best way to cope with these conditions, but the treatments they have available to them are a result of research, and more specifically, clinical trials, through which every single medical treatment is developed. For some, there are incredible breakthroughs with new medicines extending or even saving lives. But with the number of industry trials falling by as much as 60% in the last 5 years, others say they feel forgotten and they're still waiting for a miracle cure. Back in the first wave of the pandemic, Gareth was working full-time as an accountant. He was fit, healthy, and even training for a triathlon. But when the 42-year-old from Cwmbran caught COVID, his life changed beyond recognition.
It started off with fatigue, a fever, and ear pain. And, at the time it was very much, we thought that it would just be a 2-week cold or flu, but there are other symptoms presenting themselves. I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't stand up for very long, so I had to learn how to walk again. When the travel restrictions were lifted, I had to move back in with my elderly parents so that they could look after me. My life at that point, compared to how it was before, was just completely different. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't exercise. I even struggled to watch TV because I couldn't concentrate for that long. It was just a complete switch, a complete role reversal.
Newer conditions like Gareth's rely on trials because more research is needed to fully understand them.
In the last 12 months or so, I've been to Oxford, Derby and Exeter, taking part in these various trials, getting various tests in the hope that we can come up with a treatment and hopefully a cure for long COVID.
But trials aren't just important for long COVID patients. They're the lifeblood of all medicine.
A drug will not be used in the general population for any kind of clinical specialty unless it's been proven to be effective in a clinical trial. Trials are incredibly important. If you think about our standards of care today, we wouldn't be there unless trials had been carried out in the last 5–10 years.
I think we could do more, whether it be the government or pharmaceutical companies get involved, similar in the way that they did in the early stages of the pandemic to come up with a vaccine, that we could focus more effort on setting up research and clinical trials.
The Welsh Government says it puts £19 million each year towards studies, and it's working with Health and Care Research Wales to increase access to clinical trials.
Well, we saw that during COVID, really. We need new treatments all of the time to understand disease a bit better and to test new drugs as they emerge from industry. And it's important that we understand whether it works and whether it doesn't.
The number of participants recruited to industry trials in Wales looks to have declined by 32% since 2017. Why do you think that is in general?
Partly that is during COVID. We had to be really focused about the studies that we were able to deliver within the NHS. And so we've seen a real recovery of those figures since then. And I know that industry have confidence in the UK to deliver research, and industry have confidence in Wales.
Looking at some other data, there were 112 industry clinical trials that started in Wales in 2019, but last year just 36, which is quite a decrease when you look at it, about 60%. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think some of that is, as I said, about the impact of COVID and the recovery of the services. Looking at the figures today, though, we have over 100 studies open and recruiting.
So it's improving.
Definitely.
But for people living with conditions like long COVID, treatments can't be found soon enough.
What's quite frustrating from us as long COVID patients is that post-viral illnesses have been around for decades. There's other conditions like ME, CFS, fibromyalgia. At the moment, there's very little in the way of proven treatments for those conditions.
Just thinking of people who might be watching this who are living with long-term illnesses and conditions, they might be interested to know how the decisions are made about which trials get taken on, which illnesses get looked at, and which ones get taken forward. How does that all work?
The funder or sponsor of a study will decide ultimately where they recruit from or where they place the studies. However, we have research in Wales that is in every type of specialty, every condition, but we can't recruit to every single specific condition for every single person. So they can be funded in a variety of ways. Some trials are funded by industry, so commercial companies provide all of the funding to do the trial. Other studies are funded by charities, for example, Cancer Research UK, or by the government through grants.
But for many illnesses, those clinical trials are few in number. We've spoken to families of people with severe ME who say there needs to be far more research into potential drugs or treatments to help with the condition. This is Ro, an adventurer, traveller and keen sportswoman from Towyn.
Ro is my partner. We've been together for just over 12 years. Ro is a really active person. She plays hockey, she plays football, she enjoys walks in the mountains, she's a bodyboarder. Ro was probably unwell for at least 2.5 years and having symptoms, going to the doctors, trying to work out what it was. And then the conversation around ME happened. And that was really difficult because the first thing you hear about ME is that there's no cure and there's not really any treatment. Ro's not been offered to go on a clinical trial, and I think there's a real challenge for people that have severe ME because they are bedbound and housebound and really struggle, particularly here in rural Wales, for people to get access to these trials and treatments. We're very much out on our own and isolated from a lot of the help that can exist.
There's currently just one clinical trial for ME in the UK, and it's based in Norwich.
ME is really complex, and we still don't know exactly what it is, how it starts. It's a sliding scale of severity, so obviously Ro started at the mild end and just showing some initial symptoms, slipping into moderate, where she really struggled to get out of the house, spending a lot of time laying down, and then slipped in even further to very severe, where her sensitivities were so strong. We had the curtains shut for over 6 months. We can't have a conversation because the energy demands of that are too severe and her body can't tolerate it.
Ro's condition has almost completely drained her of energy, so she was unable to be interviewed for our programme. Despite that, she's passionate about sharing her story through her loved ones.
Without much information and guidance on what can actually get Ro better, we turn to other sufferers. So all of the things here are things that have helped manage some of the symptoms. So there's a lot of money been spent on trying all of these things, a lot of research, and we're just trying to find anything that could have an impact on easing Ro's pain and her symptoms, really. Because you are so desperate to find answers, as soon as you hear the word cure or this got me better and that got me better, of course you're going to listen to it. But that's a really dangerous position to be in because you are very much at risk of trying hundreds of different things that you think could help and spending lots of money on things that might not make any difference and in some cases make people worse.
Both Gareth and Shauna hope that more companies will choose to base their research here in Wales.
The Billboard campaign is a push to encourage more research and clinical trials around long COVID and ME CFS. It would be great on the back of those research and clinical trials to understand what exactly is happening so that we can take action about it and get ourselves back into a position where we can function again and re-enter society, then we go back to work and go about our normal lives again.
With hopefully the help of the clinical trials, the other people that have ME, their future will be different. And people that get long COVID, their future will be different. This has to be the turning point. And I know Ro is really passionate about getting better and also making sure that as many people as possible never have to experience what she is.